Toxin Elimination and Nutrition. Becoming superhuman through toxin elimination and nutrition. Of course, there is a lot of lore and fiction on superhumans. We mostly learn about them from graphic novels, comic books, and now, of course, the many movies, most popular being the DC and Marvel Comics universes, and there are many more. And these beings usually possess enhanced abilities, such as usually people look at them as being able to run faster, jump higher, they're stronger. They also have other qualities that we attribute to animals and insects and equipment because they have abilities being able to see in electromagnetic different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that we don't have immediate access to, whereas we only view a short bandwidth that we label Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, and so on and so on. However, what's fascinating is that even looking at fictional characters, we can see how it is possible, maybe not necessarily to be able to fly like Superman, but in relative comparison to where you may be now, to enhance yourself in such a way that it feels almost as if you're superhuman. I know for a fact that I do. And it's interesting that I feel that, but it's also been, so that's when you personally feel something, that's subjective. It could be said that it's your own opinion. But when it is noticed and continually pointed out by others, that's objective. Now, it may not be the basis for any intense, rigorous scientific research, but it surely can inspire it. But when you have a lot of objective indications of certain things, it's a good idea to look at it. Now, this is not a new title or anything that I'm talking about here from me. I have first posted a blog many years ago that has this same title of Becoming Superhuman Through Toxin Elimination and Nutrition. And that was first on my website, hypnoathletics.com. And I'm going to check out, let me just see if I can pull that up right here, through eym.hypnoathletics.com. So I'm going to go there and see what the date of that actually was. But serendipitously, as usual, when I decided, I wrote this in my notebook, that I was going to make this another topic of speaking, I saw some interesting things that came up. Oh, here it goes. So this was the original one is called Becoming Superhuman Through Toxin Elimination and Nutrition, and that was published by me on hypnoathletics.com on March 4th, 2009. But as I was saying, serendipitously as it would be, one of the superhumans who's the most popular that I had mentioned in that blog, there was recently something that popped up on my Google search. Well, it wasn't at the Google search, it was a Google recommendation, that is. And it talked about the same thing that I was speaking about in the article, but in a different way. It said something like Superman explains his fluctuations and his powers in one sentence or something like that. And I didn't look at it. I kind of just glossed over it, but I saw a few key words in there that I realized that yes, they are talking about the same thing that, of course, any geek like me or others who read and have read comic books would know this already. And that's what this becoming superhuman through toxin elimination and nutrition is about. And it's actually simply there in the title. It's toxin elimination and nutrition. So as I proceeded through the blog, I laid it out step by step so that everyone can understand where I'm coming from, right? And it's simply that one, if we look at the history of Earth, humans are a relatively new development here, and our technology and our impact on the environment is also very, very recent. And so the impact that we've had on the environment has only recently come into being, and therefore has only recently had its effects on the flora and fauna, the plants and animals around us. And of course, that being our own bodies. So here's a key fact here to move forward on. The first action to be healthy and vibrant is not to add more to our systems to achieve health, but simply to eliminate the poisons entering from the outside through food and the environment. Now, here's the rationale behind that, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. The first thing that comes to mind is Dr. Andrew Weil, who works out of a university in Arizona, at least the last time I checked, which has been a while. But he related a story. And by the way, he's a medical doctor, and he founded something it was the Institute of Integrative Medicine, I believe, because Dr. Andrew Weil believes in complementary medicine rather than alternative, which is, I feel, a great way to place that aspect of using different methods to heal. He says complement, it should be a complement to and not an alternative to. So, he's trained in Western medicine as a medical doctor, but he also promotes wellness and different things like mindfulness and nutrition in order to heal. So he talks about, and I believe if my memory serves me correctly, there was a video series that he had that was a complement to one of his books. And the book was called 8 Weeks to Optimal Health, and so was the videos. I remember getting them from the Encino Tarzana library. I had bought the book from somewhere else before, probably Borders bookstore when it was still open, or Barnes and Noble. And then I saw that they had the video available in the Encino Tarzana library. And he related a story. And so this story is part of the foundation, the rationale behind toxin elimination as one of the factors in becoming superhuman. And he talked about a story that was related to him, so it's a secondhand story to him, and that was related to him by another physician. And it was about a river and a paper company. And this beautiful, pristine river was flowing along in its natural wonder and beauty, with all the life, the flora, the fauna, the plants, and the animals that lived in, on, and around it. Until this paper company came along and set up shop and started manufacturing their paper products, but then had some runoff that was seeping into the river. And it was so toxic that it eventually killed everything in the river. And to the point where everything died because of these toxic chemicals. I think, if I remember, the term is effluence. Effluence. I mean, I'll check out with Lord Google in a moment, but I believe that's the term for that runoff. Let's see. What is effluence? Here's the definition of effluence: a substance that flows out from something. Yeah, so that's what they were calling it. So, and it looks to me that that's a general term, right? Effluence, a substance that flows out from something. So, whatever the substance that flowed out of that paper company was poisoning the river. And so, for whatever reasons, the paper company had to close up shop and leave. And in its wake, it left behind this dead river. Now, the interesting thing is no one went along to do anything about that river. But eventually, over time, as the poison diluted, unfortunately, probably running out into other larger bodies of water, but it became less concentrated in the river, and eventually everything that died in there, without anybody coming along to have to reseed the river, all the life eventually respawned. The river came back to life. It was now once again teeming with plants and animals, the algae, all of the other aquatic life, the fish, and the animals that lived in, on, and around it came back, and the river was now alive again. And so this can be an analogy for your body. One of the things that I've noticed is often we don't realize how much we're poisoning ourselves. And I had another reminder of this the other day. And years ago also, I had written and published something called FAST. And there was an acronym that stood for Food Awareness Subjective Testing. And basically, it was simply me eliminating foods that I was eating and restricting it only to a certain amount. And then on a specified time, I would choose a different item to eat from some place and see if I had any effect on my body. Well, fast forward to now. I have a very, very, just to keep it simple, strict diet, although I enjoy it very much. But I pretty much eat the same things from the same manufacturer, from the same grocery store every day. It's because I enjoy it, and it's a variety of things. I mean, there's so many things that I eat that, I mean, just in the plant-based parts, I eat cranberries and mango and almonds and walnuts and pumpkin seeds and whole, chicken, things like that. And I drink green tea and white tea and lots of water. But one day I decided to go to Panda Express, and because I had seen they have a new side, which instead of getting those noodles or the fried rice, they have this thing called super creams, and it's a mix of, looks like some kind of cabbages, maybe bok choy and some broccoli. So I got that, and I looked at the different offerings that they had and did my best to get the ones that had the least amount of gunk on it. So they had this teriyaki chicken and some other things like that. You can see what it is. It's not all glossed and glazed over by a bunch of stuff. So I ate it, and sure enough, it didn't make me sick, but I felt uneasy. my di- I, there were things that were going on in my digestion, my stomach, my head felt funny, I felt a little dizzy, so on and so forth. The point is that there was a noticeable difference in deviating from my diet where I don't, those differences don't happen when I go from drinking green tea to white tea, right? It doesn't happen if I go from eating a whole piece of, grilled chicken to boiled chicken, when it comes from Whole Foods or something like that, where I'll even say that there's an issue with some of that stuff too at that hot food bar that they have. It's better to get and cook your own foods and season and flavor it yourself. But that's not what this is about. But there's a noticeable difference, and sometimes we don't realize the toxic compilations that are building up. And so the story I just told about the river and how it was poisoned by this paper company, everything died, and when the paper company had to leave, the life grew back in the river by itself. That was an analogy for the human body, because one of the simplest ways, and I know I took a while for me to build up to that, but it may or may not have been obvious to some, but that is one of the keys to really skyrocketing your ability to recover and heal, is by eliminating, not by adding anything. We sometimes think we have to add vitamins or add medications or add this, that, and a lot of times it's simply elimination. This can even be seen in what most people call diets, right? Eliminate the sugar, they say. Eliminate the junk food. Eliminate the additives, so on and so forth, right? You take something away. A lot of times this is reducing or eliminating a certain amount of the calories that you're intaking, which is a simple, thermodynamic relationship, making it so that your energy output exceeds your energy input, meaning your calorie output, the amount of calories that you use is more than the calories that you take in, therefore it will reduce the overall weight of your body. So this is not something that's complicated. Here, we're talking about something different. Sometimes toxins have a way of burdening your body in a way that seems paradoxical. For example, certain foods that I was eating at one time far were far lower in the calorie content than what I'm eating now. So if I do a quick calculation here, right? So, and I have to go, I have a product session coming up soon. I have to do with this company I'm contracted for. But if I do a quick calculation of how many calories I'm eating here at a minimum, and so it's 3,900 calories, and that's just only one portion of something that I'm consuming compared to the 1,500 before. I had more fat and less muscle on my body than now, even though I'm consuming more calories. It's just that it's of a different type, because some of the things I was eating before were more toxic. And simply by eliminating those toxic foods, even though it was a lower calorie count, I can eat more, much more now, and I'm constantly munching on this stuff, and still reduce my body fat, the unhealthy body fat, and build more muscle. And it has lots of different effects that are overall just better. Now, I started off talking about, and I didn't completely get to it, about the early Earth, but I gave two examples of the river got poisoned, killed everything, poison went away, river came back to life. Analogy for the human body. You start feeling sick and ill, or sometimes it creeps up on you, you don't, but all you have to do is eliminate, and you can come back to your life yourself. There was a time when I started to have kidney failure in both of my kidneys, I would have had to go on kidney dialysis, and that would have been it for me. But I said to the medical professionals, I am probably going to die because I'm not going to start doing dialysis coming in for your treatments. And then I proceeded to go on a 8.5, about 9 month uh, restricted diet of eating nothing but organic and vegan foods. Now, it's not the vegan part necessarily that I'm not a vegan. So this is not something I'm promoting as veganism. There's lots of people who are much better versed in that and educated in veganism. That's not my case. Simply, it was because I eliminated everything else, and that's where I got the food awareness objective testing from, is I simply restricted it to what I knew had the least amount of toxins, or at least should have been is reported to have, being organic, and only fruits and vegetables, nuts, legumes, beans, things like that, right? So lots of nuts and seeds, beans, brown rice, and every fruit and vegetable you could possibly conceive to find as many vitamins as I could, hemp proteins, things like that. And lo and behold, my body weight dropped significantly. As you can probably imagine, I looked almost emaciatedly skinny, but I was really fast and really strong. I remember going to a capoeira event and was just lightning quick and really alert and everything like that. But I was really back down to about the weight I was in high school. I was got down to about 169 pounds. It's really light from being around 185. And some things started to happen where I needed to start eating protein again, specifically with red pigmentation. So I started eating salmon again because no matter how much I was supplementing with it, I wasn't getting enough creatine phosphate, which only comes from animal sources in the amounts that were bioavailable to me and my partner, who was doing the same thing. There's two things you don't get from a completely vegan diet that you should supplement with, and it's one of them is vitamin B12, and the other is creatine phosphate. And so we were having vitamin B12 deficiency as we self-diagnosed. We were having twitches in our face and like these ticks and palsies. It was really interesting. And as soon as we ate, within minutes of eating some salmon, after doing some research, they went away. So it's not for everybody, and maybe we weren't doing it right. It was just something I decided to do because my kidneys were hurting. You're not supposed to feel your kidneys. Long story, summing that up, the, the pain, I could actually feel my kidneys completely went away. And I didn't have to go on kidney dialysis. So this is another example. My river died. My blood was toxic for some reason. And then taking away, I didn't know what it was that was doing it. I discovered later what it was. And it's a certain coffee company that's very popular. I seem to be the culprit. But that's something I can't prove. So it's just correlation is not causation, as it's said sometimes, right? Just because something seems to correlate doesn't mean that it's actually the cause. There could have been lots of other toxic things I was doing that happened. The point is, by eliminating, I restored a certain part of my health. And the early Earth example I didn't get to is I I look at a little bit of cosmology and astrophysics, and I can imagine that if we had gone to, and this is where the superhuman part comes in, and it's where the fun comes in with human characters. And I'm gonna sum it up really quickly. I do have a meeting I have to go to, but I can imagine that if we humans went to another planet that was the same mass as Earth, had the same kind of star that we have, that was orbiting at the same speed, everything was exactly the same on that planet, except there had been no humans there. We would probably go into shock. Our bodies would probably go into shock, but then all the ailments, like the achy joints and the insomnia and the sluggishness and the sleepiness and a lot of things would start to clear up because we don't have all of the toxins impinging upon us on the environment. Here's what I mean by that, and I'm gonna look at this from some of these characters. I'll start with the ones you don't know and finish with the one that you do know that I spoke of earlier, which is Superman. There's a cartoon I used to watch called the Thundercats, and there were these villains from that lived and came from the moons of a planet called Plundar. And one of them was called Tug-mug, another one was called Chilla, and another one was called Red Eye. And Chilla, she has the least plausible ability, except we know better now because on our planet we have these things called extremophiles. But Chilla came from an ice moon, so she can control the temperature in the colder side of things and make use of the moisture in the air and create all kinds of ice artifacts and weapons and things like that. And so when she went to Third Earth, where the Thundercats were, and she was recruited to fight them, she could control these things, right? So that's one. One that's a little bit more plausible, and one of my favorite ones was called Tugmug, and he came from a very dense moon. So that when he came to Third Earth, where it didn't have as much gravitational force because of the density, the less density on Earth, he was able to jump really high, almost to the point where he could fly. Which is interesting because that was actually Superman's original power. He couldn't actually fly. He had leaps and bounds. That's where all that leaping and bounding talk came from in one of his original monologues. And Tugma could jump really high. And the most plausible one that we know of, that insects and some animals, and we have equipment for, was called Red Eye. He came from a very dark moon that didn't have any exposure to its star, and therefore he developed the ability to see infrared in the dark, right? So you can see the infrared signatures. And so the comparison is they came from environments that had extreme conditions, so that when they came to an environment on Earth that had less extreme conditions, it seemed like they had superhuman abilities simply because they didn't have these things weighing them down. The most close example of that is Tugmug, right? Where he had less gravity on the Earth so he could jump higher. We've seen this and understand this from astronauts on the moon, where you would weigh 1/5 the amount that you do on Earth. So, for example, for every 100 pounds, you would only weigh 20. So if you're a 200-pound person, you would weigh 40 pounds on the moon, and therefore you could jump and move around a little bit differently. So Superman, the final one, and I finished because I'm actually almost running into late for this meeting, is one of the most interesting examples of this. He came from a planet Krypton that had a red sun, and for all intents and purposes, they were just like us over there. They were mortal, and they seemed more regular and everyday and average over there. But when Superman came to Earth, and he wasn't inhibited, restricted by his red star, the red light that came from that star was able to absorb the rays of the yellow sun on Earth, all of a sudden, it gave, it imparted him abilities of super strength, X-ray vision, laser blasting from his eyes, the ability to fly, and all of these other things to make his skin impenetrable, simply by leaving behind an environment that wasn't necessarily toxic, but it was limiting. It wasn't as liberating. And that's the point about becoming superhuman. Is sometimes the ultimate form of nutrition is not adding anything new. It's taking away the things that are holding us down. It's like walking up a mountain, climbing a mountain with a backpack full of weights and rocks on your back. And then all of a sudden you take that backpack off, climbing that mountain is a little bit easier. But then imagine taking that backpack off and just walking on a plane. It's so much simpler in comparison. And it almost feels superhuman. That's why you see some athletes, they train with weights and things like that on, and then they take it off and they can move much more differently. And that's the foundation of becoming superhuman through toxin elimination and nutrition.